¿Qué lo que, y'all? What's good? Estamos activos. Bienvenido. We are now a community of more than 9,300 suscriptores. So big shout out to all y'all that have already subscribed. And if you haven't yet, come on. We've already learned what a conjugation is, but now we need to know how to actually conjugate verbs in Spanish. As we've already learned, just like in English, Spanish verbs have different conjugations that tell you who is doing the action and when. So in English, we say he or she talks, but I and we talk. You can add ing to get talking, or if it happened in the past tense, it's talked. So in this lesson, we're focusing on this talk and talks kind of conjugation. This is called the present tense because it's focusing on things that are happening right now, real soon, regularly, or it's a fact that's always true. So for example, you'd use the present tense to say things like, the sky is blue. This is a general fact. I live in Dallas. This is a current fact. I feel sick. This is a feeling right now in this moment. I am leaving. This is either happening right now or in the nearest future. She goes to the store on Wednesdays. This is a routine thing that usually happens. So we're going to learn how to conjugate Spanish verbs in the present tense so you can say sentences just like those in Spanish. And then at the end, I'm going to give you 2 really big tips that I wish I had known when I was learning this. To really understand this lesson, there's 2 things that you really need to remember from our previous lessons. How to say I, you, he, she, we, they, and y'all in Spanish. And these are yo, tú, usted, él, ella, nosotros or nosotras, ellos, ellas, ustedes. If you don't feel all that confident with that yet, then back up to that lesson and practice that first, and then come back to this lesson when you're ready. How to use this conjugation table. So yo goes in the top left corner, then it's tú, usted, él, ella, and it. Nosotros, nosotras. We skip vosotros because they only use that in a few really specific countries. And then ellos, ellas, ustedes. So if you're ready to go, let's get into it. In Spanish, unconjugated verbs all end with either AR, ER, or IR. So that means anytime you see a verb ending with AR, ER, or IR, you know it hasn't been conjugated yet and that it means to whatever it is. So hablar means to speak. Comer means to eat. Vivir means to live. It's just general. In this form, we're not talking about any specific person or any specific time frame. To make it do that, you have to conjugate it. To conjugate a verb, you remove this AR, ER, or IR ending and add a new ending that tells you who is doing the action and when they did it. So in this lesson, you'll know that all of these conjugations are for the present tense. Let's start with AR verbs. To conjugate a verb ending with AR, you first remove that AR ending and then you add on one of the following conjugations depending on who you're talking about. Yo is o. Tú is as. Él, ella, usted, or it is a. Nosotros or nosotras is amos. Ellos, ellas, ustedes is an. Notice all the as in each conjugation except for yo. The a carries through because these are AR verbs. Let's conjugate hablar as an example. Hablar means to speak. To make it say I speak, you speak, etc., we're going to conjugate it. So we're going to do this by removing the AR ending. So we've got habl, and then we're going to add one of the following endings depending on who we're talking about. Yo hablo, I speak. Tú hablas, you speak. Él, ella, usted, or it habla. He, she, formal you, or it speaks. Nosotros or nosotras hablamos, we speak. And ellos, ellas, ustedes hablan. They or y'all speak. In a sentence, these conjugated verbs might look like this. Hablo muy poco español. I speak very little Spanish. ¿Hablas español? Do you speak Spanish? Susana habla muy despacio. Susanna speaks very slow. Hablamos todo el tiempo. We talk all the time. Ellos no hablan inglés. They don't speak English. So boom, those are the present tense conjugations for all regular verbs that end with AR. O, as, a, amos, an. You can add these endings to the end of any regular AR verb to conjugate it in the present tense. With practice and repetition, you should be able to get these AR verb endings down pretty easily. And the good news is that the ER verb endings are almost the exact same, but you'll notice the difference pretty much right off the bat. Yo, again, is O. Tú is es. Usted, él, ella, or it is e. Nosotros and nosotras is hemos. And ustedes, ellos, ellas is en. Notice that these are exactly the same as the AR verb endings, except instead of a, there's e, because these are ER verbs. So let's conjugate the verb comer, which means to eat. To do that, we'll take off the ER ending so that we've got com, and then we'll add one of the following endings depending on who we're talking about. Yo como. Tú comes. Él, ella, usted, or it come. Nosotros, nosotras comemos. Ustedes, ellos, ellas comen. In a sentence, these might look like, Yo como pescado. I eat fish. Nunca comes el almuerzo. You never eat lunch. Marco come mucho. Marco eats a lot. Comemos juntos. We eat together. Ellos siempre comen comida rápida. They always eat fast food. So to conjugate any ER verb in the present tense, o, es, e, hemos, or en. Now our final conjugation is insanely easy. So to conjugate IR verbs, they're the exact same as ER verbs except for nosotros, nosotras. For this one, instead of hemos, it's going to be imos. So let's conjugate vivir, which means to live. We'll remove the IR ending so that we've got viv, and then we'll add one of the following endings depending on who we're talking about. Yo vivo, I live. Tú vives, you live. Él, ella, usted, or it vive. He, she, formal you, or it lives. Nosotros, nosotras vivimos. We live. Ellos, ellas, ustedes viven. They or y'all live. In a sentence, these might look like, Yo vivo en Texas. I live in Texas. Vives con tus padres. You live with your parents. Ella no vive aquí. She doesn't live here. Vivimos en un apartamento. We live in an apartment. Viven en el norte. They live in the north. Ba-bam! You now know how to conjugate all regular verbs in the present tense. Now, you might be looking at these conjugations and thinking, yeah, but ser and estar didn't conjugate that way in our other lesson, and that's because those are irregular verbs. I taught you those first because they're two of the most important verbs you'll ever learn. There's maybe 2 handfuls of irregular verbs that don't conjugate using these rules from this lesson in the present tense, but you'll learn those as we go along. Just know that the rules in this lesson apply to the majority of verbs. To wrap up this lesson, here are 2 really big tips that I wish somebody had told me when I was first learning Spanish. When you conjugate a verb, you don't have to include yo, tú, él, ella, etc. because the conjugated verb is already telling you who you're talking about. But the popularity of this depends on the country that you're in. In some countries, if you say things like tú eres rather than just eres, they may automatically assume that you're a non-native speaker. But in some countries like La República Dominicana, it's actually really common for people to still use them. So you decide what you want to go with and don't let anybody make you feel bad about the option that you pick. Pick whatever is most comfortable for you for now, and as you learn and grow, you can switch it up if you want to. The O endings are for yo in the present tense, but don't get confused by O endings with an accent mark. These are not the same. If it's an accented O ending, then this is talking about a different person in a different verb tense. So it's going to be a while before we really dive into that, but I want to point it out so that you don't make the mistake that I made by assuming that anytime a verb ends in O, that means it's present tense for yo, because that's not the case if it has an accent mark. Give this video a like, subscribe, practice by speaking Spanish, and stay tuned for the next lesson. Gracias por estar aquí. Hasta la próxima.